Musk actually hit this milestone on June 12, 2026. Now, what's really mind-blowing here isn't just the sheer scale of the wealth, which, by the way, proportionately blew past John D. Rockefeller's peak, but it's the speed. Wall Street analysts, they were super confident he might cross this threshold around 2030. Yeah, they were off by a full 4 years. So, how did he shatter that $1 trillion mark so early? Well, to understand that, we've got to look at this blindingly fast sequence of events in early 2026. This wasn't just your standard gradual stock growth, It was a total structural rewiring of his entire empire. In February, SpaceX absorbed his AI and social media holdings. Then, in May, they proved that massive Starship mega rocket could successfully fly. And right on the heels of that huge win, in June, they launched a historic IPO. It was this exact cascade of events that pushed him over the edge into completely uncharted financial territory. But to really grasp this climax, we actually need to flash back for a second. Picture this. It's 2002. Musk just sold PayPal to eBay and walked away with roughly $165 million after taxes. The rational move, literally the one any wealth manager in Silicon Valley would be begging him to take, was to buy a private island, diversify, and just live off that sweet compound interest. Instead, he made a deeply, deeply irrational choice. He took $100 million of that windfall and poured it straight into two insanely high-risk startups, a private rocket company called SpaceX and a struggling electric car company called Tesla. That single decision set the stage for the whole shebang. But honestly, the seed for this extreme risk tolerance was planted way earlier. Long before the internet millions and the reusable rockets, his very first technological payday was literally just $500. Growing up as a quiet, heavily bullied kid in South Africa, he was obsessively reading encyclopedias and sci-fi. At age 12, he coded a functional, if a bit crude, video game called Blastar and sold it to a computer magazine. He wasn't spending that cash on toys either. He was already thinking about what came next. All right, fast forward to 2008. If you really want to know how you get to $1 trillion, you have to look at how incredibly close he came to zero. 2008 was a year of just extreme stress. His massive bets almost wiped him out entirely. SpaceX had suffered 3 consecutive devastating rocket explosions. Tens of millions of dollars literally went up in smoke. By September, Musk had enough cash left for just one final launch attempt. If it failed, SpaceX was dead. But on September 28th, that fourth launch succeeded. It reached orbit and instantly secured a massive $1.6 billion lifeline contract from NASA. Talk about down to the wire. But hey, the relief didn't last long at all. While SpaceX was literally fighting for survival, Tesla was bleeding cash. Heading right into Christmas Eve of 2008, Tesla had exactly $9 million left to its name. The entire global financial system was collapsing around them, and they were 3 days away from total bankruptcy. They couldn't even make payroll. To save the company, Musk poured in the absolute last of his personal money. He was all in. Ironically, the guy who just a few years earlier walked away with $165 million was now sleeping on friends' couches and actually having to borrow money just to pay his own rent. A funding round finally closed at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve, a moment Musk later famously described as the last hour of the last day possible. He saved Tesla at the absolute final conceivable moment. And it didn't stop there. He faced a second near-death experience a full decade later, between 2017 and 2019, when trying to mass-produce the Model 3. Musk had pushed really hard for this highly automated factory, but the robots failed. Conveyors jammed up, production targets kept slipping, and short sellers were aggressively attacking the stock. Once again, Musk was quite literally living on the factory floor, troubleshooting robots at 3 a.m. in a frantic blur, as the company drifted to within just 1 to 2 weeks of completely running out of money. Now, what's really fascinating here is that surviving that exact production hell triggered an absolute vertical explosion in Tesla's value. In March 2020, Tesla sat around $80 a share. But by January 2021, fueled by newly found profitability, the runaway success of the Model Y, a brand new Shanghai factory, and of course that pandemic-era tech boom, the stock completely skyrocketed to over $800. That is a 10-fold increase in under a year. Just incredible. And this unprecedented surge did something absolutely crucial. It activated Musk's historically massive 2018 compensation package. You gotta remember, Musk took absolutely zero salary. His pay was tied entirely to these insane performance milestones. The deal was, if Tesla reached a seemingly absurd $650 billion market cap, he'd unlock options, giving him about 10% of the company at below market prices. Well, that vertical stock climb we just talked about, it made those crazy paper targets very, very real. By January 2021, that vertical climb officially crowned him the richest person in the world, with a net worth hitting a staggering $285 billion. But it's super important to understand the structure here. This wealth remained almost entirely tied up in company stock. As he often pointed out himself, he was remarkably cash poor because all of his immense value was locked tightly inside his enterprises. He couldn't just go out and spend billions in cash. While Tesla was surging, he was simultaneously expanding his empire across this overwhelming, kind of chaotic multitude of frontiers. Over at SpaceX, they essentially normalized reusable rockets, permanently changing the economics of space travel. He launched Starlink, a satellite internet constellation that hit 8.9 million subscribers by 2025 and became this vital global communications tool. Then, of course, there was his deeply polarizing $44 billion acquisition of Twitter, which he rebranded as X. And right amidst all this multi-front expansion, his brain-computer interface company, Neuralink, successfully implanted a telepathy chip into a human patient in 2024. Talk about spinning plates. During this exact same period, his involvement in the political sphere really intensified. The data shows he became the largest individual donor in American political history, putting in over $270 million in the 2024 election cycle. Following the election, he actually stepped into a quasi-governmental role, leading the newly created Department of Government Efficiency. Now, this attracted immense debate from all sides over federal spending and potential conflicts of interest. Ultimately, Musk resigned from the advisory role in May 2025, publicly citing differences over fiscal policy and concerns about the expanding federal deficit. Okay, so this brings us to the absolute masterstroke of his wealth generation: consolidation. In 2025 and early 2026, this huge, chaotic web of separately capitalized companies was systematically merged into a singular behemoth. First off, his AI company, xAI, acquired X Corp. Then, the real seismic shift happened. SpaceX absorbed those AI and social media holdings entirely. This created a unified titan of space, global internet, and artificial intelligence, and that set the perfect stage for a public offering. That exact consolidation led to the historic June 11, 2026 SpaceX IPO. They offered over 550 million shares at $135 each, pricing this newly unified mega company at a record-shattering $1.77 trillion. The IPO raised $75 billion, utterly dwarfing the previous record set by Saudi Aramco. It was this singular event that crystallized Musk's private wealth into hard public market numbers. That was the moment. So, when the dust settled post-IPO, that $1 trillion individual net worth was radically redistributed. SpaceX now accounted for a massive 70% of his wealth, taking the crown from Tesla, which dropped to roughly 28%. His smaller stakes in Neuralink and the Boring Company rounded out the final 2%. This final breakdown proves exactly how his earliest, highest-risk bets ultimately matured to completely dominate his portfolio. As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to look at the theory of value creation that got him here. It's about picking the absolute hardest problems on Earth, recruiting top-tier talent, and just accepting a level of risk that most institutions flat out refuse. It leaves us with a pretty massive question to ponder. Was this unprecedented trillion-dollar wealth a calculated byproduct of tackling humanity's hardest problems? Or was it simply the ultimate volatile reward for never backing down from a gamble? What do you think?